History is a powerful and often ruthless editor of our stories. For some, memory is a grand monument celebrating a lifetime of achievement. For others, it is a single stark epitaph carved by the circumstances of their death. Their life, with all its nuance, color, and promise, is bleached out, leaving only the ghostly outline of a tragedy. To truly understand what was lost, we cannot begin at the end. We cannot start with the splash in the dark water, the silence, the scandal. We must start with the life. For more than half a century, the story of Mary Jo Kopechne has been told as a political problem, a complication in the biography of a powerful man. She has been relegated to the role of the passenger, her identity consumed by the scandal that bears the name of the island where she died, Chappaquiddick. This is not that story. This is an attempt to restore a life to its proper chronology, to give weight and substance to the years before the final, tragic hours. To understand Mary Jo Kopechne, we must follow her journey from a hopeful child of America's industrial heartland to the corridors of power in Washington, D.C. We must understand the brilliant, committed, and idealistic woman she was, because only then can we grasp the true magnitude of the injustice that followed her death. This is her story, told from the beginning. On July 26, 1940, Mary Jo Kopechne was born in Plymouth, Pennsylvania, a small community in the Wyoming Valley. This was America's anthracite coal region, a place built on hard work, tight-knit communities, and the bedrock values of family and faith. She was the only child of Joseph, an insurance salesman, and Gwen, a homemaker. Her parents were devout Roman Catholics who raised their daughter in a home filled with love, encouragement, and a powerful sense of moral clarity. They nurtured her natural intelligence and instilled in her the belief that with dedication and integrity, she could achieve anything. The family later moved to Berkeley Heights, New Jersey, where Mary Jo attended and graduated from high school. She was a bright and diligent student, and her academic success earned her a place at Caldwell College, a Catholic liberal arts institution for women. In 1962, she graduated with a degree in business administration. In the America of the early 1960s, a young woman with her qualifications had a set of respectable, if limited, career paths. But Mary Jo was captivated by a larger current sweeping the nation. This was the era of the new frontier. A young, dynamic president, John F. Kennedy, had ignited a spirit of optimism and civic duty. His inaugural address, with its clarion call to "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country," was not just political rhetoric to Mary Jo, it was a personal summons. She felt an intense pull toward public service, a desire to be part of a generation that was actively shaping a better, more just world. Rejecting a more conventional career path, she made the bold decision to move to Washington, D.C., the vibrant, idealistic heart of the Kennedy administration, determined to make her mark. Upon arriving in Washington, Mary Jo's sharp intellect and formidable work ethic did not go unnoticed. After a year spent teaching at a mission school in Montgomery, Alabama, an experience that exposed her firsthand to the deep-seated poverty and racial injustice that President Kennedy and his brother, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, were beginning to confront. She returned to D.C. and secured a position on Capitol Hill. She began her political career working for Florida Senator George Smathers. It was a start, but her true calling arrived in 1964. She was hired to work on the staff of Senator Robert F. Kennedy of New York. In Senator Kennedy, a man who was then undergoing his own profound transformation from a pragmatic political enforcer to a passionate champion of the underdog, Mary Jo found a leader who mirrored her own deepest convictions. She threw herself into her work, quickly proving that she was far more than a secretary. She was a keen political mind, a talented organizer, and an utterly trustworthy colleague. Her abilities earned her a place within a small elite group that would become legendary in the annals of campaign history, the Boiler Room Girls. This was the affectionate nickname given to a team of 6 exceptionally bright and dedicated young women who served as the operational core of Robert Kennedy's tumultuous 1968 presidential campaign. Their office was a cramped, windowless room, but from it, they were the campaign's central nervous system. The team, including Mary Jo, Esther Newberg, Rosemary Rosie Pankowski, Nance Lyons, Anne Gargan, a cousin of the Kennedys, and Susan Tannenbaum, was responsible for a staggering amount of critical work. They tracked the intricate delegate counts needed for the nomination, gathered political intelligence from sources across the country, managed communication, and distributed the powerful speeches that defined RFK's populist message. Mary Jo was at the very heart of this intense operation. She was known for her calm demeanor under pressure, her meticulous attention to detail, and her unwavering loyalty. She wasn't just working a job, she was on a crusade. She believed with every fiber of her being that Robert Kennedy could unite a country being torn asunder by the Vietnam War, urban riots, and deep racial divides. The campaign was a whirlwind of exhilarating victories and grueling work, and Mary Jo was indispensable to it all. This hopeful, history-making crusade came to a sudden, violent, and world-shattering end. On the night of June 5, 1968, Robert Kennedy claimed victory in the crucial California Democratic primary. In a crowded ballroom at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, he gave a soaring victory speech, thanking his supporters, including the Boiler Room Girls. Minutes later, as he walked through a kitchen pantry, he was shot and mortally wounded. For the nation, it was a second unthinkable assassination, a blow that seemed to extinguish the last flicker of hope from the 1960s. For Mary Jo Kopechne, who was at the hotel that night, the tragedy was personal and absolute. The man she revered, the cause she had devoted her life to, were gone in an instant. Her friends and colleagues said a light went out in her that night. The vibrant idealism that had defined her was shattered. Esther Newberg, her friend and fellow Boiler Room girl, later said, "We were all so devastated. The best part of our lives had ended." In the year that followed, Mary Jo struggled to find her footing. She remained in Washington for a time, but the city she had once seen as a beacon of hope now felt like a landscape of ghosts. She told friends that she could no longer work in politics. The pain and disillusionment were too raw. Seeking a fresh start, she accepted a position with a political consulting firm that was opening an office in Denver, Colorado. She planned to move there in the late summer of 1969. Before she left the world of Washington behind for good, there was one last gathering. Senator Ted Kennedy, the last surviving brother, organized a reunion on Chappaquiddick Island for the weekend of July 18, 1969. The event was intended as a gesture of gratitude for the Boiler Room Girls, a chance to honor their dedication to his brother's campaign and to provide a space for remembrance and fellowship. It was meant to be a weekend of sailing in the annual Edgartown Regatta, a casual cookout, and a final bittersweet get-together before this band of sisters scattered to their new lives. Mary Jo attended, viewing it as an opportunity to say a proper goodbye to the people and the memories that had so profoundly shaped her life. She traveled to the island to honor a fallen hero, never imagining that she was walking toward her own tragic destiny. Friday, July 18, 1969, was a picture-perfect summer day. The group enjoyed the regatta and later gathered at a small rented cottage on Chappaquiddick Island. an isolated spit of land accessible only by a small 3-car ferry from the main town of Edgartown on Martha's Vineyard. The party was low-key, steaks on the grill, drinks, and the easy camaraderie of old friends sharing stories. Present were the 6 boiler room girls, Senator Kennedy, his cousin Joseph Gargan, his friend and lawyer Paul Markham, and a few other male friends. As the evening wore on, the party continued. According to Ted Kennedy's testimony, at approximately 11:15 p.m., he decided to leave. He said he was going to drive Mary Jo Kopechne to the ferry landing so she could return to her hotel, the Katama Shores Motor Inn in Edgartown. This claim would later be challenged by a crucial detail. Mary Jo left her purse and the key to her hotel room behind at the cottage. These were not the actions of a woman who intended to immediately turn in for the night. Kennedy took the keys to his mother's car, a large black 1967 Oldsmobile Delmont 88. With Mary Jo in the passenger seat, he drove away from the cottage. Instead of taking the paved left-hand turn that led to the ferry, Kennedy made a right-hand turn onto the unpaved, notoriously bumpy Dyke Road. He later claimed this was an accidental wrong turn made in the dark. Dyke Road led away from the ferry toward a remote beach. After about half a mile, the road came to a narrow wooden bridge that sat at a sharp angle to the road and lacked any safety guardrails. As Kennedy approached, he failed to negotiate the turn. The Oldsmobile went off the side of Dyke Bridge, flipped over, and landed roof down in the murky 8-foot deep water of Poocha Pond. The moments that followed the crash are a chilling narrative constructed from Kennedy's own, often contradictory, testimony. He claimed the car filled with water almost instantly. He said that through a combination of luck and instinct, he managed to push his way out of an open window and surface, gasping for air in the darkness. Mary Jo Kopechne was still inside. Kennedy asserted that he then made a series of heroic dives, 7 or 8, he claimed, into the strong tidal current, desperately trying to reach her through the windows of the submerged car. He said his efforts were futile, exhausted, and in a state of shock, he claimed. He rested on the bank of the pond for nearly 20 minutes. Then, instead of running to one of several nearby houses to call for help, he began the mile-long walk back to the cottage where the party was still going on. He arrived sometime after midnight. He did not alert the main group to the horrific accident. He didn't create an alarm. Instead, he quietly motioned for his 2 most trusted aides, Joseph Gargan and Paul Markham, to come outside. He told them, "There's been an accident." The 3 men then walked back to Dyke Bridge. Gargan and Markham, both lawyers, later testified that they also dove into the pond in a fruitless attempt to rescue Mary Jo. It was at this point, standing on the edge of the dark pond, with a woman trapped in a sunken car, that a fateful and calculated decision was made. Urged by Gargan to report the accident immediately, Kennedy refused. The priority shifted from rescue to containment. The preservation of a political career became more important than the life of the woman in the car. The trio returned to the ferry landing. Finding the ferry closed for the night, Kennedy, in a move that would later undermine his claims of being injured and in shock, dove into the 500-foot channel and swam across the strong current to Edgartown. Gargan and Markham returned to the cottage. Kennedy, meanwhile, walked to his hotel, the Shiretown Inn. He arrived at approximately 2 a.m. He spoke to the innkeeper, asked for the time, and went to his room, where he changed out of his wet clothes. For the next 8 hours, as the sun began to rise on a new day, Senator Edward M. Kennedy told no one in authority what had happened. The secret remained locked in silence. The morning of Saturday, July 19th, broke bright and clear. The first people to discover the tragedy were not law enforcement officials summoned by Kennedy, but a pair of local fishermen who spotted the wheels of the overturned Oldsmobile sticking out of Poocha Pond shortly after 7 a.m. By 8:20 a.m., Edgartown Police Chief Dominic Arena was at the scene. A check of the license plate revealed the owner, Rose Kennedy, the senator's mother. While this was happening, Ted Kennedy was seen in town, casually chatting with friends and ordering newspapers from his hotel. He was acting as if nothing was wrong. It was only after he was informed by his friends that the car had been found that he finally made his way to the Edgartown police station. There, at approximately 10 a.m., a full 10 hours after he claimed the accident had occurred, he dictated a short, prepared statement, officially reporting the incident for the first time. Back at Dyke Bridge, a recovery operation was underway. Scuba diver John Farrar was tasked with retrieving the body from the submerged vehicle. What he found would become the most chilling and damning evidence in the entire affair. He found Mary Jo Kopechne's body in the back seat, her face pressed up into the small footwell, which, in the car's inverted position, had become the highest point. Her hands were gripping the back of the front seat. To Farrar, a man who had seen countless drowning victims, this posture told a story. It was not the posture of someone who had drowned immediately upon impact. It was the posture of someone who had fought to live. In his sworn testimony at the subsequent secret inquest, Farrar stated his expert opinion unequivocally. He believed Mary Jo had not died instantly. He was convinced she had found a small air pocket and had positioned herself to breathe from it, holding herself up as the water slowly rose. He concluded that she had likely remained alive for a significant period of time, perhaps up to 2 hours or more, before finally dying of asphyxiation. It was a conscious effort on her part to be in that position, Farrar testified. She was holding herself up to get the last vestiges of air. He was then asked the crucial question: if the accident had been reported immediately, could she have been saved? His answer was devastating. He believed that a timely professional rescue operation would have had a near certain chance of success. The 10 hours of silence were no longer just a story of moral cowardice and political calculation. In light of Farrar's testimony, they became a story of potential homicide by negligence. The delay may not have just been a cover-up of a death, it may have been the very cause of it. The legal and political machinery of the Kennedy dynasty roared to life. High-powered lawyers and advisors, including former Kennedy administration official Burke Marshall, descended on Martha's Vineyard. The narrative was seized and controlled. Mary Jo's body was flown to Pennsylvania for her funeral with astonishing speed. Her grief-stricken parents, overwhelmed and in shock, consented to her burial without an autopsy. This single decision, whether naively made or gently coerced, was an immense victory for Kennedy's legal team. An autopsy could have determined her precise time and cause of death, potentially confirming Farrar's theory. Without it, the truth was buried forever. On July 25th, just 1 week after the incident, Kennedy appeared in court. He pleaded guilty to the minor charge of leaving the scene of an accident. His lawyer read a statement blaming his actions on his concussion and shock. The prosecutor recommended no jail time. The judge complied, sentencing Kennedy to a 2-month jail term, which he immediately suspended. His driver's license was suspended for a year. That was the full extent of the legal penalty for his role in the death of Mary Jo Kopechne. A grand jury was convened, but the local prosecutor, under immense political pressure, limited its scope. A subsequent secret judicial inquest was held in early 1970. The judge, James A. Boyle, heard testimony from Kennedy, the Boiler Room Girls, John Farrar, and other witnesses. His final report, kept sealed from the public for years, was a thorough condemnation of Kennedy's actions. Judge Boyle found Kennedy's testimony to be riddled with lies and inconsistencies. He wrote that Kennedy's claims of being in shock and suffering from a concussion were not credible, especially given his swim across the channel. Most damningly, Boyle concluded, "I therefore find that there is probable cause to believe that Edward M. Kennedy operated his motor vehicle negligently, and that such operation appears to have contributed to the death of Mary Jo Kopechne." The judge believed a crime had likely been committed, yet no prosecutor ever acted on his findings. The case was closed. For Ted Kennedy, the ghost of Chappaquiddick would haunt him for the rest of his days. It permanently destroyed any credible chance he had of becoming president of the United States. When he finally ran in 1980, the character issue proved insurmountable, but he remained in the Senate, a liberal icon who championed causes for the poor, the sick, and the disenfranchised for another 4 decades. He lived a long, complex, and impactful life. Mary Jo Kopechne did not. Her life, so full of promise and purpose, ended at age 28. Her name became a political weapon, her memory a cautionary tale. For 50 years, she was a ghost in someone else's story. But history's final verdict is never truly final. The truth of her intelligence, her idealism, and her character endures. And the truth of her final, lonely hours in the dark water of Poocha Pond continues to demand an accounting. It reminds us that while power can construct a narrative and silence justice for a time, it can never fully erase a life that was lived or extinguish the questions that surround a life so tragically and needlessly lost. And that wraps up today's video. If this video resonated with you, please give it a like, leave a comment with your feedback, and subscribe to stay updated on upcoming videos. Appreciate you watching.